See the weight you carry, it's written in your eyes. The kind of ache that takes up every corner of your mind. You're sitting in the silence, drowning in the doubt. I've been sitting there before, I know there's a way out. The world feels like it's caving in. Those dark thoughts, don't let them win. Just stay. Just stay. It's almost more than you can take. Please just stay. I swear the light will find you someday, and you'll be glad you stayed. So just stay.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us for another week of the Just Stay podcast. I'm really excited because I have somebody joining us this week that is near and dear to my heart. His name is Kody Aldrich. He is a nationally certified counselor and a licensed professional. Oh, I'm butchering it, Kody. You might have to help me.
It. You nailed it. Licensed professional counselor.
Perfect. And a licensed professional counselor. Also, he counsels with some of my family members, and he was my son Eli's counselor. But he has been a big part of my life the last couple years with my boys. He helps coach baseball. And he also spoke at the Lanterns on the Lake that we talked about last week. And after we heard him speak, we were really excited to get him on here for his insight and his wisdom. So, yeah, thank you so much for joining us, Kody.
No, thank you. I'm really excited for the opportunity.
Yeah. Do you want to kind of start by telling us a little bit about your story and how you got into this?
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of got a unique background compared to kind of a traditional counselor or social worker. So I grew up in the law enforcement field. So I spent 23 years in law enforcement. And during that time, saw a lot of different things, experienced a lot of different things, and saw a lot of people in need, including coworkers, and then obviously people that respond to for different calls and situations. And during that time, I grew a passion for teaching health and wellness related topics, physical fitness, and then became a coach and was a high school varsity baseball coach and coached football and other things. And so during that time, just saw like a huge need. So like in 2015, got super interested in the kind of clinical mental health side of things versus just kind of the overarching holistic wellness aspect of things, and kind of started chasing a passion during that time, and ultimately ended up getting a second master's in clinical mental health, and decided to kind of continue to pursue that career, and eventually retired from law enforcement and started counseling. And definitely kind of like a unique path, but I think it provides a little bit different perspective because I've kind of seen it from different and experienced it from a lot of different ways. And then, going to counseling myself and some of it being mandated through law enforcement after critical incidents, and then some of it being self-driven, self-initiated. I've seen just a lot of different things. And I remember the first time I went into a counselor and started talking to them about a critical incident, and their eyes were about this big. And they're like, well, it sounds like you're handling it fine. All right. Well, kind of, we'll see you later type thing. And I was like, well, that wasn't very helpful. And so for me, like my focus has been on every time I have the opportunity to work with someone, I want to provide tools. I want to provide takeaways. I want to make sure they have something that makes them just a little bit better or helps them improve their circumstances and helps them feel better faster. And so definitely very action oriented, driven approach. But with that action oriented approach and that really heavy relationship based approach, kind of person centered. With that being said, there's also, I've seen a lot of different opportunities to improve. And so that's where kind of some of the things related to suicide and suicide prevention that I've learned, that I've kind of started building this model from. So yeah, that's kind of the quick overview there of me and how I got here.
I was just going to say that I think I didn't realize that was your background. And I can imagine that being in law enforcement, that you saw a lot of things that you probably won't ever unsee. My dad was in the Army, and I remember there being just like there's a stigma in real life, like in the real world, there was a stigma for getting help or for needing help, And do you feel like there's that same stigma in law enforcement communities?
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very similar to the military community. I have lots of different friends and then people I work with in the military community. So yes, very similar stigma where, you don't need to ask for help. That kind of alpha approach of, hey, we got this. Let's just take care of it. We're fine. A lot of dark humor.
I'm sure, yeah.
A lot of kind of deferring thoughts, feelings, emotions, to just try to not really go there if you don't have to. And so, yeah, you see a lot of distraction type behaviors. There's a lot of drinking and other, ways of coping with different things. Kind of the running joke was, hey, are you going to choir practice tonight? Because you're going to go get tuned up, right? So that was just kind of that approach of like, what do I need to do to get through the day and deal with what happened throughout that shift? And so, yeah, that's been a passion of mine and a push, is trying to really break down those walls, break down that stigma. I spent 10 years in SWAT, so I don't feel like any less than because I ask for help, or those that come to me for help, that there's any particular, even remote, challenge to their authority, to their, machismo, to any of those types of typical stigma related to counseling.
I can totally see how that would be a hard. I remember it being kind of just part of the culture of like in the military. And so like I don't know what it's like with law enforcement, but I can imagine it would be similar. And that would be a really hard stigma to try and break, So I think that that's really amazing that you've put so much work and effort into working with that and working with people,
No, thanks. I appreciate that. And you kind of see it across most of the first responder population. And then also, with directly related to that is emergency personnel in hospitals and, doctors, nursing staff, and those types of things. And so it kind of branched out from there, but yeah, it's been a really interesting process, and I feel like it's only just begun, and there's still a lot of work to do. And so, yeah, it's an exciting time for sure, but definitely, challenging to try to kind of get the word out and continue to break down those walls.
I think it's amazing what you're doing and what you have done. And I think it makes you so relatable to your clients. I know that's one of the reasons that drew my son to you was you're kind of a guy's guy, like you've been there, you've experienced it. And I think that it interested Elia in you. And I think you were, the fourth therapist that we had tried within a 6-month span. And so, yeah, I'll always be grateful to you for that and for finding common ground with him. So, yeah, you were kind of an answer to my prayers during that time. And regardless of how things turned out, I hope you know that.
No, I absolutely do. And definitely a special place in my heart, as you know, with just all the different connection points. And yeah, definitely been a blessing. And just so many different things, different emotions tied to that. And yeah, I think about like that connection point and joking with him about which house he was going to buy when he made it big for me. And so just different funny things like that. So there's a lot of tender blessings, tender mercies that still keep coming. And you've probably experienced that too.
Yeah, for sure. I always imagine with your past and your old work with being in the SWAT and being an officer, how would you balance your family life? I just imagine it's hard to go to work and see what you see and see people on the worst days of their lives and then go home to your family and be present. How did you handle that for so long?
Yeah, so I was fortunate. I had a mentor early on, and it just coincidentally happened that he needed a ride home, and so I ended up giving him a ride home, and I got a chance to meet his wife, and she, you could tell, was very assertive and involved. And I remember her. We were talking, and for some reason, this conversation started coming up, and she said, yeah, when he comes home and he starts bossing people around or he goes and sits in his magic chair, like I make him go right back out, stand on the doorstep until he can come back in and be my husband. And she would literally make him physically go out, stand on the doorstep until he could change his mindset to, yeah, you get to come in and participate and be present. And so for me, kind of learning from that of, hey, I don't want to come home, bring work home, and be angry, be grumpy, be bossy, whatever else. And then in turn, there is a lot of truth to not immediately going home and sitting in your magic chair. And what I mean by the magic chair is you want to just come, sit down, blah, just let the world go. And I'm not saying you don't have downtime, but if that's the first thing you do, you're likely going to stay there for the rest of the evening and not get engaged and get involved. And so that's where, for me, immediately coming home, usually that involves some sort of, hey, what can I help with? What can I take off your plate? Do we need to go for a hike, bike, walk, run, whatever else? And then that's kind of also where I got into coaching of like, hey, where's everybody at? What do they want to do? Oh, they're at soccer. Well, I don't know anything about coaching soccer, but hey, I'll learn, type of thing. And so, yeah. So I was fortunate. I got that advice, and then I just tried to share that and live that the best I could.
I love that. I think that advice can go for any job, even not the high stress ones, because I do hair all day, and I know that if I sit on that couch when I get home, I'm tapped out. That's my okay, I'm done. I'm not getting back up. I'm not even going to engage because the exhaustion just takes over. And so Absolutely. How interesting. I like that concept a lot.
I was just thinking about how much mental resilience you have to be able to, I guess, have the career that you've had. And I just find it fascinating how different people are, because when I'm trying, and this isn't a dig on myself, I just know myself well. And I can't imagine having to like make that mental switch every day. Maybe this is like too broad of a question, but do you feel like at some points in your life you've struggled with that, and then like was it just that piece of advice that kind of like clicked in your head, or was it going to counseling, or was it, I don't know, putting other things into practice that helped you be able to do that?
Yeah, I think I'll go with the high school quiz answer of D, all the above,
Okay.
because I think it's like it's a little bit multifaceted. So for me, I think there's a little bit of, um, I guess, kind of how I'm wired in some ways, where certain things, and some of it's a protective mechanism. And as you learn more about the brain and different ways that your body navigates trauma and traumatic events. And then there's the training aspect of it. But for me, a lot of stuff was like I watched it on TV and I can remember all the cast members and I can remember the episode, but not necessarily personally happening to me. And so some of that detachment was super helpful, but it's tricky because if you're good at your job, you're empathetic. And to be empathetic, you have to go where that person's at. And so, like Brene Brown describes it where, like sympathy standing there looking at somebody down in this deep, dark hole and being like, ooh, sucks, dark down there, right? Versus somebody that's willing to crawl down there with you. And so that was the trick, was how do you be empathetic? How do you be really good at your job? How do you not be a robot, yet still balance all the stuff that you're seeing and doing? And, and a lot of people don't understand. I mean, like just for example, anybody that passes away outside of physician's care or hospice has to be investigated by law enforcement. And so you go to a lot of different scenes. And then when you look at, like you said, people at their worst, you see and hear a lot of different things that normally you wouldn't see, or if you do, it's like a one-time thing. And so being able to navigate that partly was related to just my protective mechanisms. It related to my faith. It related to my self-care. I took self-care very, very seriously. I exercised a lot. I did my best to eat healthy and try to keep, the mind, body, everything to the best of my ability that I could, healthy and strong. And then, just that support system of having that family there that you could go and have conversations with that kind of understood, like, hey, dad had a tough day, let's go do something fun. Or, hey, dad had a tough day, hey, dad, here's a surprise dessert, or here's an act of service or something like that. And so, I think it was kind of multifaceted. And I remember after one particular critical incident, I was fortunate enough to talk to a legit, like expert on use of force situations and scenarios. She's a licensed clinical professional counselor. And I remember talking to her about some of these things, and she's like, that's just how you're wired. And it's a good thing it is. Like, and so I think there's some blessings there too, that have taken place that have helped me be able to do what I do, where I can be empathetic and connect, but yet when I get home, still be present, be involved, and relatively healthy. It's been busy lately. I jokingly say, yeah, it's a long year for sure, but we're getting there.
Yeah, you're a busy guy, and every time I talk to you, I feel like you're off doing something else. You have more projects and your hands in more pots than I even can fathom how you keep up with everything.
Yeah, the word of the year for 2026 is simplify. Simplify.
All right. Well, maybe
That's
you
the word of the
can
year,
let me know how you do that. and teach me some ways.
I'm working on it. We'll see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Simplify.
All right. At Lanterns on the Lake, I really liked what you said, and correct me if I am wrong, but we were talking about mental health, and you brought up 7 H's. And this is something that I love. Was it 7 H's, first of all?
Well, so it was 5, but you and I talked, and I said, "Hey, I need to add a couple."
Okay.
So yes, you're correct, but yeah, we were talking about kind of like the 5 H's, and I was trying to find, like a creative, relatable way, and I was like, man, maybe 7's not. It was too many, but yeah, a way for people to relate to some key foundational principles that I've seen and learned related to just staying.
It's one of my favorite things about when my boys walk away from a session with you is you always have some kind of acronym or some kind of thing that makes it easy for them to remember. And I love that. But I would love it if you could share the 5 or 7 H's, however many you feel like is important.
No, perfect. And again, appreciate the opportunity, and because I recognize the impact to families, workplaces, and communities. And so I think this is such a great topic and conversation. And the first H is honesty. I think that's where it all starts. It's that honesty. It's that ongoing honesty with yourself, with others, and it's really removing the mask. It's breaking the silence. It's getting rid of the stigma, like you mentioned, and that stigma that keeps people from reaching out. And then, because I believe like talking about suicide is not harmful; it's actually life-saving. But in my experience, and I just look at the different dynamics, it's that honesty that really is where it starts. And I think sometimes people don't want to hurt other people's feelings, or maybe they just feel like it's too heavy, or there's so many different reasons. And I think about conversations I've had, with people that have struggled with this, and really getting them to be honest is tricky, and it's tough. And so I think it really starts with that honesty with yourself and with others, and breaking the silence. So that's the first one.
I love that.
Same.
The second one is ask for help. So the second H is help. And when being willing to ask for help can come at a lot of different levels. It could be a social remedy, like reaching out to a good friend, or that could be trusting a parent, or trusting an aunt and uncle or extended family. But there's no need to suffer in silence. And a lot of people that do get help will start to experience what it feels like to feel better. And then sometimes it's just like, oh, I'm fine, and move along. But I can't tell you how many times I've heard, like, why did I wait this long? I don't know why I waited. And so there's just no need to suffer. And then once you start feeling better, again, continuing that help and those remedies. And I like to talk about cognitive remedies, physical remedies, social remedies, spiritual remedies. Like there's a lot of help available. And so, depending upon the level of severity, like, reach out. You don't have to suffer in silence, and ask for help. And just kind of on the side, a little plug. Again, there's the 24/7 crisis line, which is 988, that anybody can call. There's also support available, and, Idaho Falls all the way up through Rexburg with different options. There's telehealth statewide. So, I mean, regardless of where you live or where you're at, there's help available. So First one is honesty. Second one's help. The third one is hope. Light always overcomes darkness, but we have to let that light in, and we have to keep that hope, and we got to maintain that hope. And if you're feeling hopeless, that we have to take action. We need to let that light in, and so that's that third H is hope. The fourth H is human connection. And I don't know if that technically counts as one word, two, whatever. We'll just go with it because it fits for what I'm doing here. But the most powerful prevention tool we have is connection. And that is not isolation. And that's typically what your brain wants you to do. And that is that's a very, very unhelpful behavior. And so the most powerful prevention tool we have is connection. And those protective factors relate to coping skills and counseling and other evidence-based tools. And so that human connection is important. And then finally, the fifth one for the purposes of today until I hone in my others, but it's healing. There's stories of recovery. You can feel better. I've seen it, I've experienced it, and I know that there's a lot of times we know that doesn't always. There's also stories of people not healing, but there are stories of recovery. There's stories of healing, and I can talk to you about the different dynamics and factors of those situations where people have healed, and then kind of some of the challenges related to others with going back to that honesty and going back to those other dynamics. And so kind of in summary and review, it's honesty, being honest with yourself and others. It's help, no more suffering and silence. It's hope, light always overcomes darkness. It's human connection. That is the most powerful tool we have. And it's healing. There's stories of success all over. Reach out.
Wow. I think I spoke right before you or something, but I think that I was distracted with my girls when you were speaking, so I don't remember any of that. And I feel like I should have been taking notes. That was so you need to like copyright that. That's like really profound. And I like it because I think those are things that we talk about a lot. But I really like the concept of making it into something that's like digestible, and especially when, you know, someone's hurting and it's not this like overwhelming facts about what can help them. But I don't know. I really like that. Brandy and I talk a lot about human connection, and it seems as if it always comes back to the importance of that, especially like when we're struggling, you know. And it's just so ironic that when we are going through our toughest times, that at least for me, it seems the hardest to have that human connection, because my brain just wants to isolate. It just wants to push people away. But every single time that I have connection, it always kind of helps pull me out of that a little bit, you know? And so
Yeah.
I just really, really appreciate that. We're going to have to make sure, and I'm going to have to write that down after.
Yeah.
We talk about this.
Take some notes.
Yeah.
We'll
That's what I
work
like
together
about-
and we'll just title it Just Stay.
Yeah. That's one of the other reasons that I like how you do things, Kody, is you make it so relatable. It's not clinical. It's almost like you're not coming at it from a medical standpoint, which is so hard to connect with when you're struggling. And in reality, a lot of mental health is a medical issue.
Absolutely.
With, you know, chemical imbalances and all of that type of thing. But I think when people are sick and when they're struggling, hearing about it from such a clinical standpoint and a medical standpoint, you become so detached from what's going on and the feeling behind it. And the way that you put things helps realign, I think, what people need to do while still acknowledging the emotion that comes with depression and suicide ideation and all of that. And I know how helpful that human connection is when there's an emotional foundation to stand on, whether it be with your therapist, your counselor. I understand there's professional boundaries, but not everything can be so clinical all the time when somebody is hurting so much emotionally.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of research that validates what you're saying, and that human connection, or they call it like a therapeutic alliance, is a strong predictor of success. But yet it's only, like I'll put a number on it just because that's how my brain works, but it's only half the battle. Like it's only 50%. The other half is navigating the physiological stuff like you're talking about, like the chemicals, is there medication, the side effects of medication, like all the different dynamics that relate to that. And then there's ultimately too doing the work. And as you know, that's what's so difficult about these circumstances is usually the stuff that helps you feel better are the things that you absolutely don't want to do. So kind of like you mentioned, like the times when you're at your worst are the times when you need the connection the most. It's the times you need to be active the most. It's the times you need all of these things the most, but it's the things you absolutely don't want to do. And that's what's so challenging about this. And so you're like, and I think that's why looking at what each individual's needs are, and then how to address those individual needs is so important. And it might be really intense, and it might be, very directed at certain things that are certain gaps that are there. And whether that's, health or activity or connection or whatever that is, having that individually prescribed plan is so important, but then again, being willing to implement that plan. And I think that's one of the tough things for me is I've had clients that, I'll ask them, well, hey, what did you do? Did you implement your plan? And they're like, no, I didn't. I'm like, well, why didn't you? Like, what happened? And they're like, I didn't want to. I didn't want it to work. And so part of this too is navigating everything that's working against you at those times and addressing them and recognizing them. And that's where it relates back to that honesty aspect of things.
It's really interesting because I've noticed as I'm working through my trauma and my my own type of thing, one of the first things that happens when you start going to therapy is you become more self-aware, right? They bring more self-awareness so that you can stop yourself and you can acknowledge your feelings and you can allow yourself to feel things. And I'm in an interesting situation in my life where I need to be very connected to myself and my body. And I can't stop thinking logically about it. And I went to my therapist, and we do, when I allow it, we do EMDR. And, you hold this little machine and it vibrates to a pattern in each hand, and you do almost like I want to say it's like a meditation where you connect with your body, you connect with your breathing, and then she talks you through some trauma or some feelings or whatever. And it was really interesting. I did this in therapy last week, and I've been fighting connection, and I didn't understand why. And she's like, well, let's try to do EMDR around this and see why you're fighting so hard to connect with what's going on in your life. And Kody, it was crazy. The realizations I had during that, But my point of this is it gets harder before it gets better. And I think that's why people don't reach out, is because you can't hide from your feelings. And anyways, we came to this conclusion that one of the reasons that I'm not connecting is because there's this pain I had when I lost Elia. And it was like somebody was sitting on my chest and I had like physical pain. My heart hurt. And when we did the EMDR and she had me envision this connection, you know, I opened my eyes and she said, "What did you see or feel?" And I said, "I felt the same pain that I felt when I lost Elia." And so we had to dig up that pain, which I haven't felt for a little while because it's so raw, and realize that one of the reasons I'm not allowing myself to connect is because of that fear of loss and that fear of that feeling that's just debilitating. And so I wouldn't say it was easier. I could have gone through this whole next challenge of my life being completely disconnected, but I would have missed out on a really great experience, you know? And so, I am very resistant to EMDR because I fear what it brings up for me. And the only way through trauma and the only way through that disconnection and the only way through these hard times in life is through it. Like I can't go around it. And that's the hard part, is we all try to disassociate and function and get through the responsibilities of the day when we have all this trauma kind of knocking at our brain and our brain's protecting us, but the trauma's not going anywhere unless we realize it and face it and ask for help and get coping skills and all of the things.
Yeah, absolutely. And kudos to you for doing the work. And that kind of highlights what I was talking about with doing the work. And for me, like when you talk about relating and relatable, so if you've seen the movie Inside Out, and the little emotions pulling the control panel or the behaviors, right, and the physical actions, and trauma is one of those things that will always be with us. But if you shove trauma in the closet, for whatever reason, it's usually the most inopportune times. It starts banging on the door, starts making noise, and trying to kick the door down. And so part of what you're doing is trying to let trauma out, come sit down on the couch, hang out. We know you're there, but we're cool. You're not pulling any of the controls anymore. Everything's chill. And so like EMDR does that. That's the eye movement desensitization reprocessing. And that's what it's trying to do, is either desensitize a memory or reprocess it and add in that additional information. And so, like you're saying, you do that with the bilateral stimulation, and then through that bilateral stimulation and then going back to that pivotal point for you, that chest feeling, and then either desensitizing it or reprocessing it. And so just recognizing what it is and recognizing that it is trauma allows you to let it out. It's not pulling the controls anymore. Still doesn't make it go away, and it still doesn't fix, the past. You still remember it is still there, but it's not pulling the control panel anymore or pulling the levers.
Yeah. But I think you're absolutely right. I think when you were saying that, I was like, dealing with your trauma is like inviting the uncle that nobody wants to sit at the dinner table and have a conversation. Like Thanksgiving's coming up, and I'm like, it's like facing the person that nobody wants to invite, but you've got to.
Great. Now when I get my invitation, I'm going to be like, okay, am I that guy? Like, what the heck? That's messed up.
No.
I think that just the whole time you were talking, this happens every time. This podcast has a way of teaching me things that I need that I need to know, like when I need to know them, it seems like. And it's just so relevant to my life right now, because literally this week I have had I go to lots of therapy, and my husband and I just started going to couples therapy too. And I realized something that I thought that I was over, that happened over 11 years ago. I thought that I was over it and thought I had processed it. And my husband had brought it up, and I had this very strong reaction and started crying. And anyway, went to my therapist the next day and was talking to her about it, and brought up like memories that I didn't even really I don't want to say I didn't remember them, but it was like they were shoved so far down that I kind of didn't remember them.
You suppressed them.
Yeah. And I had this thought, like, if I had just had the guts, which, I mean, this isn't regret. It's not regret, but it was kind of like a lesson that I needed to learn. If I had had the guts to face it years ago, I wouldn't be sitting here 11 years later and still putting time and energy into this crap that happened to me back then, you know? But I was too scared. I didn't want to face it. I didn't want to do the hard work because it just seemed too hard. And I do think that everything happens for a reason. And so I'm sure there was a reason back then that maybe I didn't need to go through that. But I guess it was just an important lesson that I needed to learn. So when you're saying here that, you know, you just keep shoving it down and suppressing it and not processing it, and that you need to face your trauma, and I'm just like, preach, Brandy. That is a hard lesson that I've had to learn this week, is that you can't. I mean, you've got to put in the work sometimes, even when it's hard.
Yeah. You really can't run from your trauma. You have to do the 5 H's through your depression, your mental health, your trauma. I think your 5 H's kind of help through everything.
Really, though.
So, Kody, I just wanted to thank you. I know it's not easy with your time to make time for this type of thing. And you just always make time. And I just appreciate you for that. And I appreciate for what you've done for my kids and for my family. And yeah, I don't think I can convey with words how much you mean to our family. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Lots of love. Lots of love. Appreciate you so much.
Yeah. And to our listeners, I really hope that this episode helped. We're listening to somebody that cares and that has studied and that has been there. And just remember the 5 H's. And we're so glad that you're here with us this week. And we will see you next week.
See ya.
See